bad brother. Following the tragic death of his parents, Taiyo's perfect life becomes a nightmare. He stops being social with people and keeps getting the reoccurrence of the car crash in his head. However, despite being scared of getting close to people for the fear of losing them, this is impossible with Mutsumi, his childhood friend who promises to stick by him. Things did not get better for him even after resuming his school activities. On a fateful day at school, his friends approach him asking for his help with soccer practice, while the others suggest that they create a study group or visit karaoke after school, but he declines them all. Taiyo, who prefers to be lonely since his parents' death, passes out because his friends are choking him. They let him be after a while, concluding that he must be too shy to hang out with them. However, they know his former personality isn't anything like that, and they are freaked out by his new creepy behavior. Just after they leave, Mutsumi shows up with the lunch that she prepared for Taiyo. Knowing fully well that he will not go to the general cafeteria to have lunch, Mutsumi is the only one who is able to make him do things he would normally not do. She tries to feed him his lunch while his friends watch her control his stubborn head in disbelief. Just as Mutsumi is about done stuffing his belly with a spoonful of food, they are interrupted by Mr. Hirokawa, their supposed vice principal, who rudely sticks out his tongue to bite Taiyo's portion. Mutsumi is surprised at his arrival as no one was expecting him at that time of the week. It appears he is present due to some changes in his work schedule. After engaging them for a very short period, he bids them farewell and tells Taiyo to report to his office before the day ends. Taiyo, who's been staring all along and still finds it difficult to connect with people, could not help but wonder what the vice principal at the academy needs him for. Later that day, he goes to Mr. Hirokawa's office and is shocked to his bones when he finds out that he has been summoned for a very stupid reason. The vice principal had called Taiyo just to show him the collection of Musumi's pictures that were in his possession, and also to ask about their childhood escapades. Taiyo thinks of reporting him to the school authorities, as he keeps choking him with pictures even from her childhood. This is strange to Taiyo, who thinks the vice principal has been mad for a long time for tailing Mutsumi since childhood. He says he's been watching over Mutsumi from the shadows all his life. He is jealous that Taiyo keeps getting homemade food and intensive care from Mutsumi. Taiyo, in turn, is angry to see the vice principal grinning happily at the pictures of his childhood friend. He is obsessed, and his obsession could transform into madness if it's not curbed. Things get complicated when he begins to speak about how he had silenced Tanaka, a third-year student who is interested in Mutsumi. It is at this point that Taiyo begins to process the message. In no time, the vice principal points a knife at his throat, warning him to stay away from Mutsumi for a stupid reason. He claims to have ignored Taiyo because he was her childhood friend, but that will no longer happen because she made him lunch and also tried to feed him. He says that he must protect his sister in every way possible. Taiyo is shocked to hear him call Mutsumi his sister, but before any query or killing, a short girl shows up interfering with the VP's mind and taking Taiyo to another place through teleportation. Taiyo is freaked out on waking up to a group of monsters the next day. Mutsumi then tries to calm him down and explain that they are her siblings. The girl that had saved him was Futaba, Mutsumi's eldest sister, and her other siblings, Shinzo, who possesses the ability to use weapons skillfully, Shion, who controls nature with technology, Kengo, the weirdest sibling who can change into anything, and Nanao, who is a scientist who can make extraordinary things happen with the use of chemicals. Mutsumi did not leave Goliath out, as he is their guard dog, who is also very intelligent. All of them combined are referred to as the family of spies. Hirokama's true identity is revealed by his family as they tell Taiyo that his real name is Kyoichiro and he is their eldest brother. Kyoichiro is the #1 male spy that the females are in love with, and he is also the best spy in the family. The whole family believes that he is obsessed with Mutsumi because she suffered a near fatal injury because of him many years back during a certain incident, and ever since then, a sense of guilt has made him obsess over his sister. He went as far as changing his job and name to protect her. This is exactly why he sought to eliminate Taiyo by all means possible. They advise both Taiyo and Mutsumi to get married to each other, because sharing a ring with Mutsumi automatically makes him part of the Yozakura family. If Taiyo marries into the family in accordance with their rule, there will be peace in the household and killing among family members is no longer allowed. This way, his life will be preserved. He is only required to exchange rings to marry a Yozakura. The cherry blossom ring is double banded, and the moment the other half is given out, the marriage becomes official without any special ceremony. Even Kyoichiro is ready to break the incest rule just to protect Mutsumi, and it is only right for them to act fast. Taiyo battles an intense conflict in his mind as his brain flashes back in time to the tragic loss of his parents. Mutsumi, reading this, quickly declines a marriage taking place between them, even if she desires it to happen. She explains that it would be selfish to ask Taiyo to marry her while he is still in shock of losing his parents. They suddenly get an alarm that Kyoichiro is approaching and begin to plan how to protect Mutsumi and Taiyo from his madness. They set the room on the lockdown, but he manages to still get into the room. On arriving, they engage in a dangerous and crazy sibling fight, but Mutsumi rests, assured that no family member is allowed to murder the other. Kengo tries to hide them, but Kyoichiro follows them after beating his other siblings mercilessly. He vows to protect Mutsumi after she begs him to stay away from Taiyo. However, he says that he will have to lock her indoors so that she will be safe from the outside world in exchange for Taiyo's freedom. Taiyo, who stays hidden in a corner due to Mutsumi's instructions, cannot bear to see her suffer in silence. He suddenly steps out and tells her to throw him half of her ring. She does this without hesitation, but Kyoichiro grips the ring with his ugly magic ropes before it can get to Taiyo. However, instead of backing out, Taiyo stretches and grabs the ring forcefully with the dangerous rope, slashing through his hands and causing them to bleed. They automatically become couples, which stops Kyoichiro from making any further moves. The other siblings show up at the scene of the incident and are shocked to see Mutsumi's half ring on Taiyo's finger. They understood immediately as they screamed in excitement. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro is in despair. Later that night, Mutsumi bids Taiyo goodnight and tells him to ignore Kyoichiro, who is still struggling to accept their marriage. And later that night, everyone retires to bed. However, the next morning, Kyoichiro wickedly wakes poor Taiyo up with a sharp weapon. He claims that it is one of the types of training they observe in the family, and he must go through it if he wants to be welcome in the family. He torments him further, causing him to shout for Mutsumi to hear. Meanwhile, Mutsumi, who is cooking, hears his sharp voice and runs towards the room immediately to caution her brother, who had only come to save them from a time bomb that had been planted in Taiyo's apartment. On getting out of the building alive, Kyoichiro promises to put a hold to the feud between them. But Taiyo must know the greatest mission, which is to protect Mutsumi, because his house was rigged with a bomb just to kill her. On their way to the Yozakura mansion, Kyoichiro receives a call from Shinzo, giving a report that a fragment of a time bomb was found in Taiyo's kitchen. The target again was Mutsumi, and she is sought because she is the 10th head of the Yozakura family. The Yozakura family is traced back to the ninjas of the Edo period, who produced generations of descendants with superhuman abilities. However, among them, one ordinary person known as the Head has always been born. However, the Head has no superhuman powers, but her offspring are always raised as typical Yozakura superhumans. Mutsumi is protected by the family members because she is the head and the legitimate leader of the generation. This is exactly why her life is always in danger, and even at that moment, in the car, they are attacked by two men in different cars. They attack Kyoichiro's car while simultaneously calling out to him and his sister. Taiyo does not know who is in control of the car wheels until Kyoichiro tells Goliath to move slowly. He is shocked to his bones when he sees that a dog could drive so discreetly. Kyoichiro steps out of the car and gets on top and eliminates the assassins with little effort. After this, he gives Taiyo his first mission, which is to protect Mutsumi from a dangerous assassin who deals with bomb installations. The assassin is known to be Tamaya, and he is a bomber of great repute. The bombs he builds are first-rate, and Kyoichiro confirms that he had once called on him to help sabotage a terrorist group. However, he has a single flaw, which is his addiction to social media. It is a weird thing that he loves to use the internet, and he uploads every bit of his actions on the internet. He had been posting poems that made no sense in the last few days, and also the nature of his job, his target, and how he was faring with his missions. People in the city widely engage with the Yozakura family on the internet, and Kyoichiro confirms this by stating how he has gotten congratulatory messages on Taiyo's marriage with his sister. Taiyo must study the internet and also study the assassin's page. On arriving at the classroom, Taiyo cannot do anything other than casually watch over Mutsumi, and from watching her closely, he notices that she is careful with everything she puts in her mouth, and how she is always with someone and is never caught all alone by herself. As he witnessed this, he became sad, realizing that she had to do this all by herself, as this was her destiny. He follows her to the soccer field and everywhere else just to make sure she's safe. He spots something strange at the window of the school clinic from the soccer field and heads there immediately to check, but doesn't find anything tangible. Later that day, after settling in the classroom with Mutsumi, his friends offer him chocolate and are shocked to see him accepting it without acting weirdly. His foolish friends remind him of how he used to act, which automatically brings back that strange side of him, causing him to pass out immediately. The next minute, he opens his eyes in a room different from the school clinic where Mutsumi was present. He apologizes for passing out and not being able to stay strong for her sake. However, Mutsumi apologizes for keeping him in a different room from the clinic, as it was closed for the day and there was nowhere else for him to rest. He is still bothered and proceeds to ask if Mutsumi is sure about their union, since he is her childhood friend but doesn't seem to know much about her. He was sad that he had never known about her life being in constant danger. Even through the tough times, she always stayed by his side after losing his parents. Mutsumi quickly corrects this notion by giving him a whack on the head. She attests to wanting him as her husband and also tells him that she is grateful to him for marrying her despite the fact that she was born into a crazy family. In the middle of this sweet moment, he notices a time bomb on the ceiling, but it's too late to do anything as the building immediately explodes. His foolish friends, on hearing the sound, assume that the chemistry students were performing some sort of experiment in the lab. Meanwhile, Taiyo and his wife are almost turned into a burnt sacrifice. He had successfully served as a shield to Mutsumi, who had protected her from the explosion. However, he tries to think of how the assassin managed to set things up just so right, and then suspects that something must have been dropped on his body to monitor them. He searches and finds that he is correct. Things get complicated as he cannot deactivate it, so he runs out of the building, jumping towards the top floor, much to Mutsumi's surprise and fear. It is at this time that Kyoichiro saves them from the explosion, and the other family members of the Yozakura family show up to congratulate Taiyo on completing his first mission. Koichiro then binds the bomb terrorist and throws him into the atmosphere with his own bomb to have a taste of his own medicine. Later that night, Taiyo is unable to sleep due to a terrible nightmare where he sees Mutsumi in danger but is unable to save her. He wakes up regretting whatever had happened in his dream and then mistakenly steps his foot on Goliath, who is laid by his bed absent-mindedly. Goliath bites him very hard, drawing Mutsumi's attention. Kyoichiro had also not stopped tormenting him every morning, as Mutsumi always fills up for this by treating his wound. Later that day, Taiyo, who is worried about the nightmare he had the previous night, goes to meet Futaba, who is sewing in a corner of the room because of a request. He tells her that he would love to be stronger. She merely laughs at this and warns him to desist from such thoughts, as learning should not be measured by emotions, since he is willing to get stronger just to protect Mutsumi. However, after much persuasion, she agrees to train him using the mansion. The mansion is rigged all over the place with traps for spy training, and it is not as easy as it seems. He is to stay in the mansion for a period of 1 month, since his house is no longer safe either, and most of the building has exploded. The Yozakura house's daily life itself is training, as the traps in the house are controlled by a computer. If Taiyo clears them all, he'll be accepted as a member of the Yozakura family, which would originally take him 2 years. He begins the training immediately, only to realize that meals are also part of his training, as everyone's meal except Mutsumi gets poisoned to build tolerance. He swallows the first spoon, but on getting to the toilet, there's another test. He will not be able to get through to the closet without unlocking the door, and to unlock the door, he has to decode the password of the lock, which refreshes every minute. His nightmare had just started on the day he requested power. On consecutive days, his agility, marksmanship, poison tolerance, analytical ability, and accuracy are tested with hard training. At school, on the next day, still having the worst week of his life, his friends are confused. They see him grinning pointlessly. Unknown to them, he had been given a crazy heavy shirt to wear. This is to test his physical strength. Later that day, he returns home tired and sees Mutsumi is equally tired from working late. After covering her with a blanket, he heads out to turn on the television. To turn on the television, he must hit the correct gunshot in the targeted area. He tries this many times, but he is unable to turn on the television. Just as he is about to continue trying, his wife shows up from behind and tells him to take a break. They both head to the living room where they reminisce on sweet memories together. She assures him that she sees his effort to keep her safe and that he is not a weakling. They reminisce on how he had saved her years back when they had just resumed college. They had barely known each other, but he had saved her from a group of girls who tried to bully her because of her hair, which is a different color from other people's. She had seen him as a helpmate since that day. On the next day, he keeps trying to aim at the right spot with Shinzo's help as Shion emerges from behind, teasing Shinzo and dismissing Taiyo. However, Shion thinks it's strange that he is adapting fast to the training. Shinzo suggests that he is talented, but Shion thinks he must possess something other than talent. Later that day, everyone is shocked to have Taiyo at the breakfast table without sustaining injuries from the lasers as usual. However, He passes out the moment Mutsumi hands him some poisoned milk. Mutsumi, near tears, watches him close his eyes in discomfort. He is taken to Nanao's room for intensive care, and there she diagnoses him as having a fever brought on by fatigue. However, Futaba is too smart to be fooled, so she can tell that he is not suffering from fatigue, but he had used the fake skin to cover up all his injuries for a while. This is planned alongside the other siblings except Kyoichiro to help him train fast without relenting. However, Futaba is disappointed in him for endangering his life all because of his desire to protect Mutsumi. It might be a good thing, but he will be unable to last long if his health is in a bad state. She advises him to take care of himself before he tries to care for anyone else, and then hands him a book to enlighten him about emotions and training. Taiyo begins to learn that he must take things slowly and learn the correct way, rather than rushing into things to suit his desires. After a few days, he recovers fully and resumes training, and for the first time in 3 weeks, he is able to unlock the bathroom door. This causes his ring to glitter, signifying his acceptance of the family. Everybody except strong-headed Kyoichiro congratulates him. On the next day, Mutsumi, who loves to cook, is cooking as usual when Taiyo rushes to the kitchen with underwear strapped to his chest. He had come to ask how to appear as a woman to test his disguising skills, only to be misunderstood by Mutsumi and everyone else. He is teased all throughout the day because of this. Diverting to a serious event later that day, Shinzo and Kyoichiro set out on a mission while Taiyo and Mutsumi, on the other hand, set out for school. On strolling along the sports field, a hockey ball is unintentionally thrown into Taiyo's direction with crazy force, but before it lands on any of them, he seizes the ball with his left arm without looking back and throws it back to the players like nothing had happened. They open their mouths in awe as the captain begs him to be on their team. Taiyo ignores this and proceeds with walking Mutsumi to class. Mutsumi commends him for improving over time, as everyone now sees him as a superhero. She tells him to help her with something when they return home later, after which he agrees without asking. However, on getting home to see a heap of documents that Mutsumi had stamped and checked just because she is the head of the house scares him. She saddles him with some responsibilities, including trashing the fake divorce letters Kyoichiro had managed to sneak into the documents. She suddenly stops halfway on noticing that Kengo had forgotten to attach the paperwork for the report. She storms out of her desk in anger and heads straight to Kengo's room, with Taiyo following from behind. Meanwhile, Shinzo is not keeping up with the mission as he is almost running out of bullets and necessary ammunition. It gets worse as there is a two-way trap set in the building. Back at home, on getting to Kengo's room, Mutsumi is disgusted to see a heap of clothes and to see everywhere rough like a pig's house. Kengo did not only scatter his room, he is also not hiding his pendulum, as he complains of being tired from disguising as other people and wearing their skins. This infuriates Mutsumi, who tries to get him to work. He dashes out of the room without prior notice, which causes her to initiate a lockdown on the whole house so that he doesn't get away. Mutsumi and Taiyo then begin hunting. They visit Shion's room first and find Shion exercising. Unknown to them, Kengo had disguised himself as Shion and lied that he had not seen himself in that room. Knowing that they will visit other rooms, he disguises himself as Futaba, and on seeing that the supposed Futaba is napping, Mutsumi concludes that Kengo will not dare to wake her up. They both visit the other siblings' rooms and do not find Kengo. On getting to Kyoichiro's room, Mutsumi is irritated to see her picture everywhere on his wall, so she does not pay attention to the fact that Kengo could disguise himself as one of the pictures, and he eventually does. It is on the upper floor that she sees all of her siblings and finds out that they have been together and Kengo had been disguising himself as each person. He manages to announce his hideout as they all look towards a picture frame above the heads. Kengo dashes away immediately, but in this process, he had disguised as Mutsumi's husband and had sent Taiyo dashing away instead. Mutsumi, knowing this, pretends to be ignorant and then expresses her pain about losing Kengo. She then releases the building from lockdown and heads to her desk with the supposed Taiyo. Without giving him a chance to suspect her movement, she handcuffs his hands alongside hers, stating that she is aware that he is Kengo in Taiyo's skin. She caught him when he opened the door to her desk and had entered first, unlike Taiyo, who always waits for her to enter first. He surrenders to her and apologizes to Taiyo, and after that, they finish up their work together. Later that day, in the evening, they settle down to eat, but Taiyo is worried that Shinzo has not returned home, and just as he speaks about him, a call comes in through the family telephone. It happens to be Shinzo calling. He screams hard the moment Taiyo picks up the phone. He keeps asking for Mutsumi's help at the top of his voice. She switches the call to video immediately to enable her to see the situation. Shinzo has lost all of his weapons and his bullets are finished. He is nothing without his bullets, and it is only a miracle that he managed to stay alive in such a dangerous place. They are left with a single option, which is to send Taiyo to the dangerous place. In a minute, Taiyo is ready to leave, and he arrived at the place in no time. He is caught and almost killed, but he remembers the training Shinzo had given him, and he is able to quickly defend himself, seizing the gun from behind and hitting the attacker in the jaw. He quickly finds Shinzo, who hugs him dearly and cries like a baby. Just immediately, the door springs open, exposing them both to danger. Shinzo, who was sucking like a baby a moment ago, stands to his feelings sharply, eliminating the men mercilessly and shooting effortlessly and happily. However, things get bad when Taiyo gets shot in the left leg. He falls to the ground immediately as one of the enemies instructs Shinzo to drop all of his weapons, if he would love to give Taiyo first aid treatment. He drops his weapons without much thought. This causes Taiyo to remember Mitsumi telling him that Shinzo's weapon was his most treasured possession, and anything that makes him get rid of it must be a greater treasure. He is in pain, but he is delighted to learn that he is treasured. But he also remembers that Mitsumi once said that if any situation required him to drop his weapon, he can be given the littlest thing that is regarded as a weapon and can make use of it. Taiyo throws him a sharp object which he throws at the enemy immediately and then shoots him thereafter. This helps him completely eliminate the attacker and also gives Taiyo first aid treatment to stop the bleeding as he carries him home on his back, reminiscing on all that had happened. Meanwhile, a man is secretly assigned to tail Taiyo. After recovering and going on several missions, Taiyo starts to feel like a full Yozakura. However, on a fateful night, as he heads home on a romantic phone call with Mitsumi, the man that had been tailing him comes out of a car looking very scary, as his beard is untreated and neither is his hair kept. He gets off the call with Mitsumi immediately. The man introduces himself as Hodokiyama of Koizumi Precinct and also a police officer. He tells Taiyo to come along for interrogation, and in the next minute, he is in the hot seat for interrogation at the station. A lot of things seem weird to the police officer as he carried dangerous weapons like a hammer around instead of a proper gun. It begins to show him some of his mission escapes where his pictures were taken and posted on the dark web. Taiyo is very shocked because they had told him from the beginning that all of Yozakura's family atrocities would be covered up. However, the case is not the same for him, as it seems like his possession and use of a firearm and also his trespassing into other people's property and then also taking part in an early morning car chase on a public street had all been reported. Hodokiyama also accuses him of blowing up his school. He had done all of these, but some things that he did not do were mixed up in there. He is unable to think straight as the police officer tries to force him to spill the truth. He accuses him of probably working with some secret organization, but the worse it gets, the more Taiyo refuses to admit it, and even after forcing him to drink a truth serum, he spits it out, making use of the water catcher throat balloon, originally meant for magic tricks and drinking games. He still insists on knowing nothing about it even after the intense interrogation. Just as the police officer is about to strike him hard with his hammer, Taiyo runs out of the chair swiftly and sticks his back to the wall. At this point, blood begins to flow out of a sack. The blood is one of the people Hodokiyama has killed for committing crime. He had killed him for drug dealing and also ruining people's lives with his connections and money. Taiyo is having the worst time of his life as he wonders that the man pinning him mercilessly to the wall is really a police officer. He threatens to interrogate his friends at school if Taiyo refuses to say the truth. It is at this moment that he forcefully strikes the wall after Taiyo escapes from his grip. What comes next is shocking, as the broken wall reveals Koichiro sitting on a chair. It appears that Koichiro had set up the whole thing just to test Taiyo. Hodokiyama Seiji was his childhood friend and classmate in junior school, and in exchange for helping him with his police investigations, he covers up Yozakura family activities. He tells Taiyo to return to school and congratulates him for passing the test while he heads to his next mission. As Taiyo leaves for school, Hodokiyama promises to give him a call as he will be sending him on a mission soon. On returning to class, he is exhausted and finds it hard to concentrate. He struggles to fight sleep, but fails when Koichiro shows up in class to represent their absent teacher. The day could not have been more worse for Taiyo, who tries very hard to cheat nature. Nature wins eventually, causing him to close his eyes slowly. However, since Koichiro, Mitsumi, and Taiyo have the ability to communicate through magic and sign language, he strikes him with chalk to disrupt his sleep and warns him never to fall asleep in class. This is to test his ability to stay half awake during a mission. He pulls it off even after being struck by a sleeping gas, causing everyone in the class except Mitsumi and him to fall asleep. He wields Koichiro's attacks half asleep, much to his surprise. Later that day, at home, it begins to affect him, and he sleeps. talks, and does other weird things while still sleeping. The next morning, he picks up a book and tries to read the strategies of dating as a spy. A spy's job is intense, and it is very easy to get distracted from the reality of marriage, and also, history has it that most spies are divorced because they did not create time for their partners. Fear grips Taiyo on learning all of this as he calls out to Mutsumi immediately to ask if she will be free to go out with him later that evening. However, before he can finish off his statement, Hodokiyama calls him on a mission. He apologizes to Mutsumi and heads out immediately. Hodokiyama had sent him to an amusement park to survey a male and a female with illicit guns lurking around and pretending to be on a date. On getting to the park, Taiyo only settles down and has not thought of a plan to catch the couple when a little girl teases him for sitting alone. However, that is soon resolved when Mutsumi shows up at the park, surprisingly. She had called Hodokiyama and had asked if she could accompany her husband and thought she was already present. Taiyo thought of killing two birds with one stone. He decides to turn it into a date with Mutsumi while they simultaneously search for the criminals. They notice about 4 different couples sitting suspiciously, so they decide to look into each couple. The first set of couples, Kenken and Mochi, seem really innocent and lovey-dovey, and so Taiyo and Mutsumi strike them out of the search. They move to the next couple who looks scary and almost likely to have a weapon. However, they are surprised to find them innocently in love with each other, irrespective of their looks. Looking into the next couple, who are both hefty, they are also unable to find any flaw in them. Taiyo takes a break and decides to get Mutsumi a flower. He then decides to follow the last couple who are dressed in suits in dark shades. From their looks, they are nothing different from assassins, but he is disappointed to see the man proposing to the woman. However, the strange thing is, Mochi and Kenken never stopped showing up behind Taiyo and Mutsumi everywhere they visited in the amusement park. Things are revealed when they both switch from being in love to being monsters. In no time, they both bring out their guns and begin to fire at each other. Taiyo saps them with his weapon and also calls on Hodokiyama, who transports them to the station. Later that evening at the amusement park, he eventually gives the rose flower to Mutsumi and also apologizes for not engaging her as a normal lover would with their wives. They are both happy as they enjoy the moment together.